Hello, welcome to this webinar on mentoring. It's organized by the Sigrid Education chapter. And my name is Veronica Fillinger. I work at HPC, which is part of the University of Edinburgh, and together with Scott Callahan from the University of Southern California, we'll facilitate this discussion on mentoring. But before we start, I'd like to briefly say why we decided to organize this webinar. And I really feel that mentoring is very rapidly gaining in popularity within the HPC community. And that's not only because it's an effective way of nurturing early career researchers, HPC practitioner, but also a way to push for equality. So with many new institutions and organizations thinking of starting their own mentoring programs, it feels like a good time to actually discuss and learn from the experience of already established programs. And we would like this webinar to be useful for pretty much anyone. So those new to mentoring and those that already are very familiar with it. So if at any point you have any questions or you would like to share your perspective, please do so. And now I would like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves and tell us in what capacity they got into, they mentor and how they got into mentoring. So who would like to go first?
I'm happy to go first.
Go for it.
Okay. So my name's Sally Ellingson, and I'm at the University of Kentucky. I am research faculty here. I work through the Cancer Center, and I do computational biology and manage their high-performance computing initiatives. And I got into helping with mentoring activities through conferences right out of grad school. So during grad school, well, the reason that I was interested in it is through undergrad and grad school, attending student-specific conferences that had special networking and mentoring events really encouraged me to go to grad school and helped me build my network through grad school. And one of the biggest conferences that had an impact on me was going to supercomputing. And when I was in grad school, they had a broader engagement program that I attended most years through grad school. And then as soon as I graduated, the organizer for the next year asked for volunteers. So I volunteered. And then that program was no longer there, but we run that program now at the SIAM Computational Science and Engineering meeting. And then we took the ideas of broader engagement, of inclusion and outreach, and creating a more diverse workforce to put throughout the student programs at supercomputing. And I've also been involved different aspects of that since then. But last year I did the mentoring protege program and also did that at the SIAM meeting this past year.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
This is Jay, I'll go. So I discovered that I liked helping people learn back actually when I was an undergrad. I had the opportunity to teach a programming class and realized how much I enjoyed it. And then through my career, I discovered that it wasn't actually the classroom instruction that I enjoyed as much as working with somebody more one-on-one or in small groups to help them get through their problems and figure out how to best achieve the goals that they had. And over the years, I've learned different ways to work more effectively with people and how to help watch what people are doing and see what they're actually ready to learn. Because that's another challenge is that you can't push somebody too far, too hard, too fast, because they may not be ready to do particular things. And that's one of the challenges of mentoring, is figuring out what the person is ready to do and keeping them right on the edge of what they can continue to absorb and learn and grow. So that's the kinds of things I'd like to bring to this as well.
Hi, so this is Julian. So I'm now a lecturer at the Department of Computer Science at the University of Reading. And before I worked 9 years at the German Climate Computing Center, where our research group worked together with the University of Hamburg. And I got basically into mentoring or into teaching when I was a bachelor student, and I assisted in practicals, and I really enjoyed to kind of really push people for learning. And then when I was a master student, I supported some bachelor students with their thesis. And that was then really like a one-to-one mentoring to make the best out of the thesis, because I had stumbled very hard with my bachelor thesis, and I want other people not to fall into the same pitfalls, right? So to save them basically time and get a better outcome, maybe. At the University of Reading now, we have an academic tutoring program, which means each academic has like 30 plus students from all the programs that we have, where we have to meet them basically on a regular basis and discuss and observe their progress with learning. Yeah, and also, of course, supervising of PhD students, which I think applies to all of us here. And another thing is, I also participate in the ISC HPC travel count committee, where we have a lot of people applying, like 45 to 50, 60 people every year, and then I kind of mentor them a little bit to make the best out of the venue.
Hi everybody, I am Sarvani Lopaka. I am Women in HPC's Mentoring Program Director, as well as HPC Administrator with UC Merced. In my current role, I enable researchers affiliated with UC Merced to use campus-wide HPC resources, and I'm also an Exceed Campus Champion. So I participate in helping researchers scale their simulations to exceed resources as well. Every week I facilitate HPC walk-in hours. It is like where people can come in and talk about their HPC stuff and help each other. So that helped me realize that there is so much potential in peer mentoring, and also having a place where a group where people can discuss HPC. Also, my background has been in electrical engineering as a master's student. I did not even know what HPC was until I started applying for until I started applying for jobs, and my first job was as a HPC engineer. So I thought it might be a very good idea to have a space where new people know more about HPC and how to work the ropes. Fortunately for me, in the practice and experience in advanced research computing conference, I was talking to Sharon Budajiva. She's in the steering committee for WHPC, and she told me so much the work that Women in HPC is doing. And I got excited, and I spoke to Toni Collis, WHPC chair, and she has had this idea. She has wanted to create a space for new HPC members, and I thought that is a great thing for me to take on. So we started this Women in HPC mentoring program, and we are in the second cohort for the program, and I'm super excited about that.
Thanks. This is Scott Callahan, so I'm the co-moderator of the session. And so I appreciate you all giving us introductions, giving us a sense of kind of who you are and some of your mentoring background. So I'm going to, kind of for this next part, what I'm going to do is ask some questions of all of you, or any subset who wants to jump in. For those of you who are attending, kind of the goal is for this to be a discussion. So I'm going to try to kind of get the ball rolling, but if you have questions of your own or things you're curious about, feel free to jump in and ask, and whether it's a question for a specific individual, you want more details, or it makes you think of something else you've wanted to know about mentoring, please feel free to participate. So I'm kind of curious, each of you, on the panel, you're very actively involved in kind of one or more of his mentoring programs. And you've touched on this a little, but kind of why does your program exist? Does it have kind of specific goals? And if so, what are they? I'm also kind of curious, do you ever get pushback from other people, maybe in the broader community, about the program or about the time you're spending at the program? And if so, how do you kind of address that?
I think I'll take this one first. So Women in HPC program is to connect, Women in HPC mentoring program is to connect women from around the world with mentorship and support. This is primarily a professionals network because there are so many schemes providing mentoring programs for students in universities. However, where appropriate, we'll take in students as well. And because this is a worldwide program, this is mostly online, although we had a few cases where the mentor and mentee are from the same university and they're mentoring sessions for coffee sessions. We also sometimes get requests from mentors and or mentees who could work with someone in their time zone better because of various commitments they have. We try and accommodate those requests. And as far as pushbacks, so far I'm fortunate that our Chief Information Officer, Ann Kowalczyk, she sees the value in having a mentorship program for a broader community. So work in my day job, I don't get pushback on that front, and the broader community also sees a need for this kind of mentoring program for early career professionals. So I have not, up until this point, I have not seen a major pushback, and I didn't have to work through that.
I can add some to that. So I think like the underlying thing behind most of the mentoring programs I'm involved with is, one is increasing the diversity of the future workforce, and also creating a community and, you know, making a strong networking opportunities for everyone involved. And as far as pushback, I don't get any pushback, but I am research faculty, so I actually have a very small percentage dedicated to service. So I don't necessarily report all of the time that I, you know, use towards these kind of activities, but I, you know, try to focus on being involved with conferences that I get back from. And also me, still early career, being involved in these kind of activities puts me in touch with people that are more senior that volunteer for these things, and it continues giving me opportunities to be mentored as well. So I try to think of it in terms of that as well.
Jay, I think you're muted.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I was trying the space bar thing and it wasn't working. So I'm having a bit of a different experience right now that I'm actually just working through, and that is that officially at my job, my funding comes from a hard money source, and there are particular deliverables that they want based off of that money. And my employer is happy to support me in doing these kinds of activities, particularly after I let them know the kind of impact that it's having in the community and throughout the rest of Sandia. But at the same time, they want to make sure that I'm not neglecting the things that I'm being asked to deliver, that it's actually paying my paycheck. So that's one of the balances that I'm having to work on. Is one is making sure that my time management keeps my internal deliverables achievable, and at the same time making sure I'm communicating that I'm making those deliverables, as well as dealing with these kinds of external activities that are beneficial.
So in my case, let me quickly go over what the university offers with this academic tutor program. So this is kind of a prescribed approach to really talk to the students and make sure that the students make progress. And from my perspective, this is very positive, because every student has the opportunity to talk to a more senior academic and get advice how to proceed. But in terms now of pushback, right, I would say there are quite many students, maybe only like 50%, that would actually consider to attend such meetings and take benefit of the tutor. A lot of them, they really want to kind of experience things alone. You can email them 5 times, you can actually call them, and it doesn't motivate them to come. So that is in my perspective a bit sad, because it's wasted opportunity. And now if I go to PhD students and HPC, it's kind of similar, I say, in terms of pushback. So I think a lot of people, they really appreciate advice, right? So you can openly discuss things, but there are also a kind of people, they want to learn everything on the heart. I can only say it that way. And so whatever you tell them, they say, okay, I'm not interested. I just want to make my own experience. And you can advise, okay, fine. And they just resist. Maybe, or quite some oftentimes, they come back to you and say, okay, it was right what you said. But in most of the times, they really don't bother. So this is, from my perspective, the sadness of tutoring, in particular if it's prescribed. It works best if people are open and really appreciate and know that they have benefits. Don't know what the other thinks about it, but that's my experience.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I see we have a question from Aaron. We're a small group, Aaron, so if you want to unmute and talk, feel free.
Okay, hi Scott. Hi everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, I was just wondering, we don't have a mentoring program per se. We have office hours and we have consultations. So I was just wondering what the format was that you all, are you emailing people? Do they come at a certain time? And then if they don't show up, they're not there. How does it work at your respective universities?
So Erin, I'm talking about the HPC walk-in hours that happen on our campus, and so with that, we have 1.5 hour dedicated for peer mentoring, and then we understand that might not be a time when everybody can attend, honestly. So we try to make exemptions, and we try to be as much available for the later times too. But then that is the one time where experts will be there for sure, and you can have more people doing the same work as you are. With Women in HPC mentoring program, we have a call. We solicit the applications. We advertise it on Twitter and social media, and also on the Women in HPC mentoring page. And once we have their information, and once they do the sign up form, that's when we do the matching part. Hope that helps.
See. Okay. Yeah, we have we implemented this consultation request, and sometimes I think it sounds too formal. It might be better to call it mentoring, but once people take to it, they tend to repeat. So then it's pretty convenient, but it does cost a lot of our time, right? Because it's one-on-one for an hour, so that is kind of a big chunk of time.
Yeah, so this is Jay. I'll chime in with a little other information. So for me, most of the people I end up probably 2/3 of the people I end up mentoring are students. And one of the big things that applies not just to students, really to everybody, is finding what's the best communication channel for them. And it's not what the best communication channel is for me, but for them. And that makes it easier for them to participate. And it's easier for me to adapt if I want to help them get the benefit than it is to try to expect them to do something they're really not prepared to do. So that's one of the changes that I make is adjusting my communication channel. And the other one is that I try to be somewhat aggressive about following up about, hey, aren't we meeting today, rather than leaving it up to them and letting it slide. And that's putting more work on me, but at the same time, I want them to get the benefit. And even if they're not quite seeing it or they're busy, let's schedule a different time then. But just trying to follow up rather than leaving it completely on the mentee to figure out what needs to happen and when.
So I have a follow-up question. So how do we actually mentor? Like, is it a structured thing? Do you prepare for those sessions, or is it just like, more organic thing? It just happens naturally.
Oh, that's Jay. I'll jump in on this. So what I end up doing is every case is always different. And that's one thing that I always try to remember. And there's particular things that people either need to learn or want to learn or don't know it's what they need to learn, and something that I know I can help them with. And sometimes there's particular things that I want to try to accomplish on a particular day. Sometimes there's particular questions that they have for me that we need to go through. So with students, I try to help them be focused on what are the milestones that they need to succeed as a student. What are they doing to be able to get to the next milestone? What kind of things are they having challenges with? What things are they unsure about or they need more information about? And how do they go about finding them? And prompting them with questions so that they know that there's other things that they could potentially get for help, and also let them know that, yeah, this is something that we can talk about if you need help. So for me, it's very much an individualized, fairly organic thing that is driven based off of the goals rather than just kind of an impromptu meeting.
Yeah, I would agree with Jay, but for the students, so when we have this academic program, actually the university is quite smart. So they give us a sheet, quite some sheets of paper, which has ideas and questions of the different stages of the students. So that really helps people that are not so experienced with mentoring to actually take on the role. At the same time, I consider it as a checklist. So I go through and say, oh yeah, we have in this organic meeting, oh yeah, we covered all those things. Oh, but maybe we should talk about this. So I think those checklists have some little benefit in times. Can I also pose one question now back to everyone? Yeah, well, let me think about it again, and then I'll pose the question. Sorry, next. Just lost it.
No problem. I had a kind of something you said earlier, Julian, I was curious to follow up on a little bit. So I know that in my mentoring experience, sometimes there can be a challenge in trying to figure out how much to essentially kind of, give direction, help the mentee out, give them, kind of, well, in your situation, here's what I would do, as opposed to, kind of stepping back and letting them, maybe providing support, but letting them go forth and figure things out on their own. And I was wondering, from the four of you, kind of what suggestions you have about how do you kind of figure out that balance between providing kind of direct assistance and taking a step back and letting them figure things out on their own, so that they still feel that they're being mentored, but they don't feel like they're being stifled.
All right, that's Jay. I'll jump in. So the big thing for me on that is I want to be asking them questions and prompting them on what questions they should be asking rather than lecturing. The idea of just telling them things straight up is not very appealing for me. And if they haven't had to kind of work through at least what the questions are, then me giving them information is not as valuable in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I would. Yes, Julian, I would agree. I mean, first of all, you ask the student, so what is it? What you think about the matter, and like what should be the next steps? What are the problems you face? But if there are some students that unfortunately they need more help, so they have no clue, no idea, so you should give them. You can prompt them some hints. What do you think about going in this direction? And then you have this kind of dialogue, and at the end of the meeting, you have an agreement of what are the next step for them, and hopefully over time they develop their independence, sort of.
For me, I feel like when students come to talk to me with basic questions, I feel like sometimes they don't know what question to ask, like Jay was mentioning earlier. So it's important to give a baseline and make them feel empowered to ask me a question and not feel embarrassed about it. But at the same time, also making them understand why a solution might be better than, one solution might be better than the others, or why we adapted this solution versus if any other solution that we have. So walking them and guiding them through the process, and making them understand why we're doing the step that we're doing, helps. At least this is in context of technical aspects, like why we use SCP, for example, and not why we use rsync instead of SCP. That's the one example that I'm thinking about. So just making them figure out why we're doing what we're doing, and also making them feel empowered to ask questions. And yeah, I think that those are my takeaways.
For me, if I'm mentoring someone specific to like a research project that's my own research project, I'm more willing to offer direct guidance because I feel like I'm more suited for that. And I still don't, try to tell them exactly what to do because they're students and they're learning to be researchers, and that's what I'm helping them with. But I try to suggest, the different things to investigate and look into, and do it more in terms of this is how we want to compare these two different things to make a decision on what the best thing to do is, so that empowers them to go look at their own solutions as well and to evaluate what the best decision is. But as far as if it's like a mentoring activity where it's not a research project, but guidance on like career paths and stuff like that, I don't like to ever offer any direct advice, but just, tell them stories about my experiences or experiences of other people that I know. And also try to, if I don't think that I have any, good advice to offer or a story to tell them, try to think about other people to introduce them to as well.
So now I actually remember my question. So it was because we discussed before the responsibility of the student, and Jay made this idea to contact the student, right? I always find it difficult to kind of to judge, right, which is the point where is their decision, where's their responsibility compared to ours, right? Like I take from undergrads, right? I drop them maybe 3 emails saying, this is what I am. You can be don't worry, just you can come with any questions, what have you, right? But after 3 emails and there's no reply, I kind of stop, right? Because I don't even have the phone numbers, and I escalate it through the university. But so there's always this kind of trade-off. But if the people are more mature, like with PhD, right, I would assume, we make a joint appointment. I don't have to remind them because they got a calendar invite, right? So they come, and if they don't come, they drop me an email or something like that. So I think I really see this a bit. I really want to know what you guys have as experience, and what is the limit, right? Or of course, this is very personal and depends on the individual we deal with. But I think there is a limit of dealing with people kind of, and accepting that they should have self-responsibility to some point.
Yeah, this is Jay. So where that dividing line is, I think depends a lot on the situation. If it's somebody that is assigned to you and they didn't sign up and ask for the help, then yeah, your responsibility is probably a lot less. But if it's somebody that's seeking help, and one of their big problems might be time management, and helping them figure out how to prioritize things might be one of the things that you, by going in and kind of being more aggressive about contacting them and trying to help them fit in the mentoring time, might be exactly what they need, kind of as an indirect lesson. So that would be kind of the dividing line for me, is that if they're seeking help, then I'm going to give them a lot more attention. But if they're somebody that is not seeking help, then 2 or 3 times saying, hey, I'm here, I'm available, anytime you need anything, let me know, let's schedule something. And if they don't respond, then it's like, okay, I guess I can't help you.
Sometimes I see this even with faculty correspondence too, because they have a lot on their plate and they have like hundreds of things going on at the same time. So email I have seen faculty with 300 emails, unread emails, and it just horrifies me to have been in that pile. So just going on and knocking their door sometimes is very helpful, because they're like, oh, thank God, okay, I know I need to follow up on this, but I didn't. Even with students, sometimes I feel like just going into their office spaces and trying to figure out if everything is okay has helped me. But I also understand that our campus is relatively smaller, and I work on campus, so it's easier for me to walk across the spaces and interact in person with students and faculty. So that's one thing that I've done, and it worked.
This is Lindsay. I had a question about something totally unrelated. So how do you draw the line between kind of being a counselor for the students versus being a mentor? So students have a lot of things that are going on, a lot of like life struggles, and how do you structure it such that you're not giving them life advice and not being that person for them, or maybe a mentor is that support role for the student, because if they're having problems in life, then it helps you succeed as well. So how do you draw those lines?
This is Jay. So I tend to have a very blurry line there. The big reason for that is that work-life balance is something that we all seem to struggle with pretty seriously. And as long as there's something that is that work-related or work impact part of it, that's something that I feel like I can give some help on, but I'm certainly not qualified to be a counselor. And if things get to a point where I can look at it and say, I really don't know what to do here, then it's my responsibility to say, you need to seek a counselor because you're in an area where I can't help you. And so that's where I try to draw the line there.
So this, Julian, so for me, as we have this nice program at the university, we also have a really good well-being team. Okay, that means if I see that, the student has an issue, and now my line is there when I say I don't know the student well enough to give proper advice, right? Sometimes if you give an advice, a life advice, it could actually be negative, right? Because you don't know the person enough, and you may push into something that may be negative. So I tend, for people like students, undergrads, which I really rarely meet, to kind of signpost them to the well-being team. I mean, if it's really a very simple question, of course, I can answer and say, like we heard before, this is some idea that I have from my life. Use it or not, kind of. But otherwise, they go to the well-being team. But if it's a PhD student, or of course stuff that I work with and I know for a year maybe, then typically, we have more private discussions about our life balance and stuff like that. So I think that's, from my perspective, fine. There is no strict line.
Yeah, thanks both. And a related question would be, oh man, now it has escaped me as well. So all of you as mentors, do you seek any professional development on your own part in terms of coaching techniques to be able to use towards, or all of us who want to be mentors, should we be getting some sort of certification or working on our mentoring skills before agreeing to be mentors? Because I feel like I can mentor, but I also feel like I like to be educated on things before I take that leap.
This is Jay. You just need to jump in, for one, because you can never be fully prepared. There are classes that are worthwhile to kind of help you learn how to think about how to help people and what kinds of things to do with them. But since every situation is different, all they can do is kind of set you up. The things that I've done over the years have been watching what other people do and trying to figure out why are they saying things, how are they approaching problems, and trying to kind of just be analytic about the situations, and then trying to adopt and absorb those things for myself. And in a lot of cases, it's not so much that I want to use those things. It's more a matter of seeing the patterns, so that if I see them in something else, I can say, hey, I see this pattern's happening, and I've seen it happen before, and these are the kinds of things that happen, and this may not be where you're wanting to head. So it's been kind of it's a lifelong learning experience on both sides, I think.
This is Sally. I have had a little bit of formal training and stuff, and not very extensive and not things that I personally sought out, but as part of career development program that I was involved in, it was training that was mandatory that we did. And if you are interested, I would say that, like, if you look at your institution or wherever you are, there are possibilities that there is stuff available. But I think, as Jay said, the most useful thing is just getting involved and actively doing it.
So I have another follow-up question. So until now, all the practices you described kind of are based on the assumption that you actually have time to get to know your student. What about short-term mentoring? Like if you have, just an hour or two during a conference or another event, how do you speed up that process? Can you actually do something useful? Can you help the student? Is there anything that you can do, or is it like just having a chat and pointing them to the right direction?
This is Sarvani. I will take this first. For me, during conferences, I have been on the other end. I've been the mentee. And for what I found most helpful was give all the information that I possibly can to the mentor as soon as possible. So they have more time to think it over and they know how to connect me to the right people. So I think as a mentee, I found that very useful. So that 1 hour is possibly where I'm going to make most connections and get the most out of my mentor. So being prepared and having 1 or 2 defined goals from that particular session was very helpful.
I can speak as far as someone that has been facilitating these kind of events. So one of the things that I like to do as prompts beforehand, any sort of mentoring session, whether it's one-on-one or group or speed mentoring kind of thing, is to encourage the mentees to think ahead of time about these particular questions, and also remind the mentees, as we were talking about before, about their responsibility in it. Like, these mentors at these events, it's all volunteer basis and they're just there because they enjoy and hope to give back, but it's not their responsibility to hound students, to ask for their email addresses, to follow up with them, but to remind them that that's their responsibility. If they hit it off with someone for any reason, if they think they can offer them good advice or do anything in the future, they should follow up with them and take that upon themselves.
Yeah, I would really add that this is part of this responsibility question. I mean, if you have to mentor someone and they made a decision to be mentored, right? So they should probably have thought about some questions where they have issues with, whatever that is, right? Or they say, I did this, I'm not quite sure, whatever. So they come up with their ideas and their thinking, and then you can, of course, make the connections to past patterns or your own ideas. And I think that's how it can work. If someone comes, right, to me, and I mean, I had this case, and you say, I have no clue, right? I want to be mentored, but so what do you want to talk about? I have no idea, right? And some point you kind of can only answer, right, maybe it's the first step is to kind of really think about what you have questions. What are you dealing with? What are your problems in life? What do you think, what you enjoy, what is good, or what have you, and then you kind of get into the discussion again. But other than that, you always have kind of some questions, right? So you can help them to find the initial questions, and from them you can draw the strings towards proper questions, but hopefully they have thought about it.
I like Sally's point, and I mean, as I have not realized this until Sally pointed it out, that the role of facilitators in the speed mentoring and 1 hour mentoring, because I'm up until my undergrad and master's, I'm very new to, I did not know what mentoring was and what mentoring could do and the potential of mentoring. So facilitators giving me some pointers about what to think about and what kind of questions I could potentially ask my mentors would open my eyes to those kind of, to be thinking that way. So that's very helpful.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate, focus on one or two things is the thing that's always worked well for me. And if there's nothing there, then try to focus on asking things like career development, those kinds of questions to kind of prompt something. But you really can't do more than one or two and then potentially set up a future relationship.
So do you actually follow up with people after the events, or do you expect them to follow up, or there's something that just happens and that's it?
I always offer and encourage them to follow up, but it's rare that anybody ever does.
Do you know why? Is it just the way it is, or is there an actual reason behind it?
I don't know. In all of my working with student programs, I generally end up with about probably one, maybe two students a year across all of the programs that I end up developing an ongoing relationship with. And that just seems to be how the numbers work out, is that people look at it as they got a chance to ask somebody some questions, they got some answers, now they're going to go off and do their own thing. That only occasionally does it actually click in a way that they say, I need to be able to ask this person more questions. And I don't know that they feel comfortable potentially trying to start a relationship because of the power imbalance. It's not so much that we're in a position that we have authority over them, but they realize that we are people that have been in the field and we have a lot of visibility, and they say, oh, you've got to be way too busy to be able to spend any time with me. I'm happy I got this 1 hour and that's all I'm ever going to get. I can't think about bothering you. And trying to get past that is, I don't know how to do that effectively other than reaching out directly myself and saying, hey, we had a great conversation. Can we talk some more? And again, that kind of pushes it back on me. And I don't really want to get into the situation where that's my job, other than just saying, hey, let's do this more.
I can add again from a facilitator perspective of a couple of the things we try to do to increase the chance of creating these longer lasting relationships. And that is to vary both the reason we connect people and the kinds of opportunities we give them for connection. Like, so in matching surveys, we've increased not just what is your research interest, but what are their hobbies, what is their career trajectory that they would like, because maybe someone at a national lab that doesn't do anything related at all to what you do could give you better advice on having a career at a national lab, but doesn't know what to tell you to use a new algorithm for something different. Or maybe if you connect with someone that also is really into art, you might create a better personal connection that makes you feel more comfortable with connecting to them in the future because you have some other thing in common that just made it easier for you to develop like a natural flowing conversation with them. And then the other thing is just varying the kinds of activities. So like sometimes you might have like a group thing, like a dinner where there's multiple people, that maybe multiple mentors and multiple mentees at a table. So you have more one-on-one, but also you can get more variety. Or speed mentoring where you don't have much time, but you're going to definitely increase the numbers of interactions you get with and have a greater chance that you meet someone that you might click with and have, something in common with and a reason to stay in touch.
That's a good point, Sally. I appreciate that you've brought up kind of some other, because I think so far we've mostly talked about one-on-one, but you've brought up a couple of other contexts in which people can kind of successfully mentor. So Vani, I see you wanted to say some things, so let me hear from you first.
So as a mentee, I have followed up with the mentors I've met, and for 60-70% of the time they got back to me, and great connections happened because of me taking that initiative. But as a mentor too, sometimes in conferences when we talk, there is not much time for me to send an email or make the connection to the student. So I took it upon myself to make that connection for the student and the other person. And I don't know, I have not seen much progress on that front, but when I reached out, most likely than not, I got really good responses from the mentors.
So we do at the university quite often some kind of group mentoring, we have then like 5 to 6 students, and they can also kind of report and discuss with each other the issues they have, because basically there is no power imbalance between them, right? And however, what I personally find is often they don't use this kind of opportunity, right? They are much more happy to discuss the issues they have with friends, and the friends are not necessarily this group. They are, because this group is randomly basically assigned. So the issues they have is typically stays within this small collection of friends they have. And from my perspective, this is a wasted opportunity, because this kind of groups, right, they have their own thoughts then. And if they would sometimes really reach out, like to mentors, they could get new ideas, which then doesn't happen so often in my perspective. That's one of the reasons I think that not everyone uses mentors as much as they could, because maybe they have a very good friends who they trust, or maybe because they feel they don't need it because of their relations.
We've talked a little bit about, we've kind of touched on this a little bit already in terms of, you know, asking questions of your mentees and trying to have them kind of think through what their concerns and problems are. But I was wondering, for people that are, you know, kind of thinking about getting into mentoring, what do you think helps make an effective mentor? What are kind of good practices and other things that people who are getting involved should keep in mind as they try to improve their mentoring effectiveness?
So I think, this is Julian again, I think firstly, you have to be really listening, very good listener. You have to be tolerant, you have to be caring, and I think a very important aspect is, of course, the analysis of what you get taught, that you can step back and really be objective, look at what the student tells you, and kind of try to find out the reasons behind it and open them, discuss with them if these are possible reasons. And then, even if those things may be, let's say, not very positive, you have to be really open and speak frankly to the students about matters that may be negative. I think that makes a good mentor from a very good mentor in my perspective, right? Because ultimately, I personally believe that a good mentor would accept that someone doesn't like them, but they really learn something, a very important lesson, compared to someone else that says, oh, this is not very positive, and so which doesn't want to have such kind of conflict, so to speak, right?
So this is Jay. The big thing for me is to always remember that it's not about you as the mentor, it's about the mentee. And remember that everybody's path through life is going to be different, and they're asking for help to find their path. And you're trying to share the experiences that you've had that can try to help them achieve what they want to do. And that for me is really the thing to focus on.
So
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I'll mute myself.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to add, like, one of the things as far as like mentoring at conference events and stuff. And, you know, I've heard good stories about great matches that have led to internships, and terrible stories where mentors are like, my mentee never contacted me, you know, but that's just what's going to happen sometimes, especially when you talk about these like large groups of, you know, lots of mentees and lots of mentors. And I would say, to be a good mentor, if you care about it and you want to do it, just keep showing up. Don't be discouraged if you had like one bad experience, but keep showing up and keep being willing to make connections and follow back up. And then also just the fact that a good mentor relationship is not going to happen without a mentee that wants it. And that, you know, as a facilitator, always reminding the mentees that they have to put in for whatever they want to get out of it.
those are all very great points. And in the beginning of every cohort for Women in HPC mentoring program, we tell how mentors on how to be effective mentors. And one thing is, yes, definitely be good listeners and have an open mind and understand that you share your experiences and not and so in order to help them figure out their own path. Yes, and also for mentees on deciding what they want from the what they want from the program too. So one thing is to open their mind and to know how much to push them to. Sometimes they might not see the opportunities that they or they might think that they're not capable of doing some things that you see the potential with. So open their eyes to new possibilities, but then you don't want to push them too hard, like Julian or Jay were mentioning in the beginning of the conversation.
I think one thing that can be challenging about mentoring, both kind of at the individual level and then also, you know, at the level of an entire kind of mentoring program, is kind of evaluating it after the fact. You know, trying to figure out, okay, was this program, you know, useful, right? Did the mentees who participated get out of the program what they wanted? Obviously, you know, I think sometimes, you know, we hear kind of great stories of successes and students are able sometimes to achieve the goals that they were seeking. But I was curious if kind of how the four of you, if there are any particular approaches you use to try to figure out if your individual mentoring or programmatic mentoring has been useful, has been valuable to the mentees.
Scott, one thing that we do with WHPC is our core team member, Lorna Rivera, she's amazing, and she did a great job of designing surveys that would that are completely anonymous from both mentors and mentees. And we sit together after the cohort and decide on what kind of improvements that we need to make for the next cohort and what new things we can implement and how we can make this program better. Yes, Aaron, Lorna is amazing. And so all of these, yes, it's hard to do the postmortem, but like Scott mentioned, it is a very important step in trying to make this program any better in the future and to accommodate more people.
This is Sally. As far as events that I've helped with at conferences, we usually do both an in-person wrap-up at the conference where we ask about feedback, not just specifically about the mentoring program we had, but every aspect about the programs that those cohorts are involved with. And that includes the mentoring, you know, portion of it. And we get feedback on what they thought worked well or which programs were the best for them. And then we usually also follow up. You know, we always follow up with an actual survey, and depending on the program, they may also go to the mentors as well for feedback on what they thought about it.
I have to admit, I haven't been very good about this other than on an informal basis. I try to keep up with people that I've talked with, and anytime I see them, I try to follow up and see where they've gotten to. For the people that I know it's been helpful for, they seek me out. So, and I end up having relationships with them over a longer period of time. So I know that there's some cases where it's easy to tell if there's success, and then there's other cases where either the person just completely disappears and I don't know what's happened with them, and or it may be that I follow up and they've decided to do something different. So it's something that's something I need to be better at. But for me, it's very much informal.
Yeah, for me also, I mean, for some, you get maybe positive feedback immediately during the meeting. I liked it the most, right? When they say, okay, this was a good tip, so didn't look like it that way. I think the direct feedback works the best, but obviously if you meet people years later, you can still get some feedback if something works or not. At the university level, I think we have some kind of surveys if it's useful or not. Yeah, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure how that exactly works.
So we kind of talked about the positive feedback, but does any of you actually have an example of like complete mentoring disasters? And if so, what happened and why, and what you would do differently and next time, given the situation?
Oh, I'll jump in here. I've had partial disasters. I haven't had complete disasters though. So I had one student that I wanted him to work on a particular project and help him grow in that particular direction. And he ended up getting completely distracted on something else. And it took me a while to understand the amount of effort that I needed to put forth in order to help them achieve the goals that was set out for them. I have another somewhat recent graduate now. I think she's graduated 2 years ago now, and she's absolutely dead focused on getting a faculty position, even though she's currently in a lab. And for what she wants to do, the lab is actually a better place for her, but the prestige in her mind of having a faculty position is more important, even though it will end up hampering her work. So I try to help her, but she's very stubborn and determined to get what she wants. So I try to help her as much as I can, but at the same time, there are times you just have to step back and say, okay, I've given you the advice that I can, but if this is what you want to do, then either I can try to help you achieve that, or we need to do something different.
So I can report about some negative experience that I had. And so typically, right, as we said, the goal is to motivate someone for their own life, right? But I keep usually pushing people quite some, but there are people that feel then kind of pushed out of their comfort zone when they have to think so much about their future or whatever they could do. And so that led in my kind of experience to some discussions where people disagreed with me, so that very strongly. So there were strong reactions, albeit I wasn't aggressive or anything, but they reacted very harshly on those kind of suggestions. And you like, even if you then move back, sometimes you trigger something in the people, which leads to a complete shutdown of communication and possibly even a long-term negative relationship, right? But you just ask them, like a couple of questions like, did you think about this? And what is your goal in life? And oh, you have no goal, maybe you should think about, and suddenly they kind of really explode, like they feel criticized in themselves. And I wasn't kind of prepared for that. And I still don't know quite how to deal with it, except being very honest with the people and really trying out. So if they come, right, and ask me for help, obviously, or we discuss things. So if they don't ask for help, better keep it by myself. That is kind of my personal way with dealing with things, but I find it difficult in times.
Just to kind of follow up on that, yeah, I'm curious what advice you have if you find yourself in a mentoring relationship that isn't going the way that you hoped, right? That maybe, like you said, Julian, you say something and it's obvious that you've struck a nerve, or just there's some other aspect of it that isn't, it's not clicking, it's not going well. Do you have any kind of advice for what to do in that situation? Do you suggest kind of stepping out and trying to find another mentor for the individual? Are there ways to kind of recover it? Do you try to address it head on? I'm just kind of curious what you all think.
So what I do, right, I would apologize for the people and say, okay, let's just forget about it and not talk about it again, kind of, and try to be nice to the person. But in some cases, like I had in the past, like I said, it didn't quite work because they knew that I saw their real face, I would say. So they kind of treat me differently. And then I say, okay, I mean, obviously, we cannot deal with each other. That's okay, right? So, and then, as you say, go maybe and see another person to help with, because that's not a good starting point if such a relation has really negative feelings associated for whatever reason. That's all I can say. I mean, so what is with the others, right? Just to with you other three guys. I mean, didn't you quite have some negative experience like that where someone shut down and maybe had some psychological issues because of some regular normal chat, kind of?
This is Jay. I guess that I have had that, but my experience is no different than yours, I would say. You've pretty well covered everything that I could add on that.
So I have I think one more question I'd like to ask. We should feel free to continue the discussion afterwards, which is that kind of why we've learned from all of you that obviously mentoring is not your day job, and it takes a good deal of time and effort. And so I'm just kind of curious, kind of succinctly, what would you say? Why do you continue to mentor? And what would you say to someone else who's on the fence to encourage them to give mentoring a try?
So I think that I kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but besides the, feeling good and feeling like I'm giving back and doing something that helped me along the way, is the fact that just being involved with these things continually puts me, building my network and being in touch with other people that I can learn from. And it's just a continual process that I enjoy being a part of.
Yeah, I'll second that one. Building your network, if you have no other reason, just expanding your network is a really good one to look at.
Yeah, I'm also very supportive. Really good feeling to see that other people make good progress, and if you help them with it and you have a little part of it, it's really enjoyable. Like with kids, I would say, but not quite the same relation, obviously, but it feels very good.
I agree with all of that, and also it helps me become a better leader as well, and understand more about how to be effective and an empathetic leader, really. So to be able to see people and people grow and people developing their own networks, and yeah.
Are there any other questions from any of the attendees, or any of the panelists? If you have questions or things you're curious about, how other people are handling or managing.
This is Jay. Let me just add one last comment on the previous point. One of the other things that I have found is that it's not just building your network, but you may be in a situation where you need help from someone, and just having people in lots of different areas that you've potentially had a relationship with, even if they're not part of your immediate community, gives you lots of ways where you can potentially get help. So it's not just a matter of giving back, it's also helping yourself.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think when even in our professional development or wherever kind of work environment where we are, what I really enjoy is when I can go to my colleagues and ask them whatever question, right, related to job or not job, and get kind of an advice. So in that particular role, they are like a mentor, like the speed mentoring, right? I think, and likewise, so I think it's really a living environment where we share experience and towards a common goals. And I hope that, every place is like that, kind of. And so, but new people, younger people, right, they have to get used to really share and overcome this idea that if they have a problem, they cannot talk, right? But that they are really, that we are open, everyone is open to talk. And once they've learned that, I mean, they can build such a nice environment as well. This is, I think, what motivates me as well.
So this is Jay. I have a question for the others on the panel. Is how do you manage that perceived power imbalance between the mentor and the mentee in order to make the mentees more comfortable?
This is Sally. I think that this problem is a little bit less for me since I'm just 5 years out of grad school and I'm usually in the situation where I'm mentoring people in grad school. But, you know, just remembering the personal stories from what they're going through and it not being that long ago and just relating to them.
Yeah, I mean, with the normal students also, and I don't see the, or I personally don't feel this power imbalance. I see them, they have made maybe less experience, life experience or something. Maybe they are even, sometimes it happens that the student is even older, right? So I don't make a distinction. For me, they are all in the same level as I am. So I share some of my weaknesses with them. If they should start, you know, to talk about weaknesses, so I think that kind of shows them that we are on the same level. That's at least how I deal with it.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, in that case, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank our panelists again for attending and generously giving of their time to share their mentoring experiences. I also thank the audience members for attending. This will be posted on the SIG HPC education site. I've been recording you the whole time. And so if you want to go back and any sections you'd like to listen to again, or if you have any colleagues who are unable to attend but you think might be interested, we'll send out an email once it's posted, and please feel free to share that. So thank you all very much for participating today.
Thank you.
Thanks.